Exactly. And that's, essentially what a healthy relationship is when two whole individuals come together. It's not when two half individuals come together, right? So kind of
Yes.
this myth of I want to find my other half is actually,
Yeah.
semi-toxic.
On Stories of Self, we go on journeys into the lives of ourselves and others. We see how stories connect, how they diverge, and how we can create our worlds and solve our problems. This is the real-life remix of storytelling, which is so often stranger than fiction. So come and sit around the fire, chill by the ocean, or get a coffee with me, as I delve into the stories of self that make, break, and remake us. Some stories are dramatic, some are serene, some will magically mirror you, and some will be delightfully different. I'm your host, Katie Reeve Arnold, and this is Stories of Self.
Hi, so I'm here with Kait Melendy, who is a mental health therapist, and her latest book called Evolve is out right now, and it's a self-help journey through the evolution of the person through life. So thank you, Kait, for joining us.
Hi, Katie.
Fantastic to have you here. I thought today we'd talk a little bit about the illusion of the other half. And that illusion of actually even needing another half to make us whole. That lack of wholeness in ourselves that maybe we shouldn't be seeking to fill from outside. What do you feel about that? Have you ever felt like someone seeking to fill their lack of wholeness by finding you, or have you ever looked to another?
Absolutely. And I think it's something at one point in life or another we all fall susceptible to. And I think it takes a high level of self-awareness to recognize we're doing it. And I think that's the one thing that distinguishes people who continue to do it and people who actually evolve past doing it.
Yeah, that's really interesting, because I think really it's not about kind of kicking start our journey in this life being perfect already. It's actually about what we do with the issues we find. So realistically, we're the holder of our own kind of hidden gold, if you like. And then what we do with that really is makes the rest of our lives, makes our way forwards. And then this kind of idea of each being alone in ourselves or feeling lonely in ourselves, maybe not feeling whole, not feeling enough, not feeling like we have everything we want, and then looking to each other to kind of patch that up or fill that. I mean, obviously we are all different, so we bring different things to each other and to relationships. But I think that sometimes there's a question of should our essential needs only be filled from outside, or should we be able to find something within us to fulfill our essential needs? What do you feel about that?
Yeah, I mean, and I personally think, especially as a therapist and my work with clients, is really learning to fill those voids within ourselves, because it's too often that we do look to a partner to fill those voids. And when that happens in relationships, of course, a lot of conflict comes up, right? It's like those expectations that we set, and when they don't get fulfilled, you have conflict, rather than going within and saying, what can I give myself today? How can I soothe myself today, instead of looking to my partner
And
to
I
fill
think
that void?
it can also be that, if one partner is doing well and the other partner needs support, then that's one thing. But if both partners are actually stressed or struggling or having other draws on themselves and their attention, then it can be really, really difficult if there's a requirement from the other for a support level that maybe the partner doesn't have to give right then. So then it kind of, that's when a relationship can kind of feel like it's dragging on you, rather than it being a home to come to. But maybe if we all create that home within ourselves first, that kind of secure, safe place that we return to, being within ourselves. I know it was one of my New Year's resolutions actually a few years back, was to make a beautiful home for myself inside myself. And I think that came up because I tried to make a beautiful home in life. A physical home and a kind of home lifestyle with others, in and around others. But still so many things went wrong, and still I didn't feel, I guess, at peace or supported. And I think that was because despite all of those external structures, I didn't have the internal structures to actually form that foundation of support.
Absolutely, yeah. And, another benefit that comes with learning to fill that void within yourself is, like you said, when your partner is having that bad day, that you can still keep that stability and be grounded and be that source to help them move through it as well. Whereas when you're looking for your partner to fill that need, who is already having a bad day, this is when we tend to get very sucked into that dynamic, and we tend to lower our energy to kind of match that instead of staying stable in that energy and being able to raise that person up.
Yeah, definitely. I think it can be very challenging to support another person when you're not feeling strong within yourself. Obviously, in an ideal world, we would be able to kind of draw from reserves within ourselves. But I think sometimes we all get depleted, and sometimes when you're in relation to someone, when you're in a partnership with someone, obviously issues can be affecting you both at the same time. So yeah, finding that extra energy for that person can be a bit difficult sometimes. Although we all want to, I think that most people would say that they want to be able to support their partner, but just they don't always have that energy for them. I guess really also it's that idea of needing to be our own true love, and if we can't be our own true love, where are we creating that energy from? Because otherwise we're becoming a drain on ourselves as well. So filling our own cup in that way, and it's not just the idea of filling our own cup first, putting on our own oxygen mask first before we help others, but it's the idea of where does that filling of that cup come from? Where does that capacity come from? Because if it's not coming from within, then we're waiting for something else to support us with that energy that we need. And that can feel very depleting and very isolating and very lonely. And then if we don't get it externally, we don't have it to give, which is, really limiting. And I think that essential loneliness can really bring us to a feeling of isolation. And in that, we kind of desperately reach out, just looking for someone else to supply that to us. And often in the beginning of a relationship, when the garden is rosy and it's the fresh kind of rose-tinted spectacle stage, we do get what we seek from each other, but maybe as things come in and priorities change, and then it can kind of slip.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, it is normal at the beginning of a relationship to kind of have that sense of excitement, and like you said, everybody has those rose-colored glasses. But then it's like, of course, every relationship goes through that phase, and if it continues, that's when it dies down and kind of the reality of life sets in, right? And that's when, partners, if they continue to seek that validation outside of themselves and in the other partner, that conflict tends to happen. So for example, someone waking up in the morning and they don't get a text from their partner, and it ruins their entire day, whereas the 3 months prior they did, right? So it's really standing in your power and having that awareness of, I can be happy and stable outside of another person's actions or behaviors, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think I've definitely felt it sometimes, and I've made it all about myself as well. I guess I've been in that situation where as the relationship changes, or somebody's busy with something else and you don't necessarily get that contact that you've become used to, or maybe that you're craving. Yeah, I've let it be a problem with me, which I guess is a hang on from childhood, when we all, the only way we can view any problem is to view it as being about us. It's not safe for it to belong to our caregivers, so we make it about us. And yeah, I guess that's what I've done before in the past. I didn't get a message in the morning. Oh, why? I didn't, what have I done wrong? What's wrong in the relationship?
Right.
Where actually there doesn't need to be anything wrong at all.
Right.
I think also maybe that mind reading issue has come in. I think, well, I guess it's classically, we think of people turning around saying, if you don't know what's wrong with me, I'm not going to tell you.
Right.
I shouldn't have to tell you,
Right.
And I think, we've all either had it said to us or said it, or maybe both. But that mind reading is kind of, not fair on anyone else, but it's not fair on us either.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's actually, one thing that causes a lot of conflict in relationships is like assuming that the partner is a mind reader and they know why you're upset or they know what's wrong, right? And, part of healthy communication in a relationship is acknowledging that nobody but you can communicate how you feel, and it's not fair to expect a partner to do that. It's really our responsibility to communicate those needs and our emotional needs without assuming that our partner already knows, regardless of how long we've been with them, right? That's something that people need to continually practice and remind themselves.
Yeah, I mean, I used to, when I was younger, I guess I kind of had this idea that I would be with a partner who would know me so well. It would be like I'd be able to read their mind and they'd be able to read mine. And I think that, a lot of films set us up for that kind of romantic view as well. But I now don't think that sounds very romantic, because if you already know everything about each other and you don't, then what comes in your life to talk about? Where are you? How are you being yourself in your full extent of your radiant separation from everything else? And I know sometimes separation, like an isolation and aloneness, doesn't feel so radiant, but once you make a beautiful home for yourself inside yourself, it feels pretty good to just be 100% true to you and to meet people 100% true to themselves as who they are. And it feels pretty exciting, actually, that no one can read your mind and you can't read anyone's mind. So you get to have these awesome conversations or interactions. And all of a sudden my previous dream of reading each other's minds doesn't feel as romantic or fun anymore. It feels a bit boring. It feels a bit kind of, you just don't want to be with someone who's just like you or can,
Exactly. And that's, essentially what a healthy relationship is when two whole individuals come together. It's not when two half individuals come together, right?
Yes.
So kind of this myth of I want to find my other half is actually, semi-toxic.
Right. And it is a myth. It's a complete illusion. It's a complete... I mean, I don't think I've ever met anybody who's existed as one half of a whole who has really been happy within themselves, because we do need to be whole within our own self. Otherwise, essentially, we're just working through our lives with this lack. We kind of lack part of or half of ourselves unless we are constantly bonded to this other person. So, we end up with this stress then related to the idea that if they left us, we wouldn't be whole.
Right.
Without them, we wouldn't be whole.
Right.
And I guess we pass that on, like, for ourselves to be fulfilled. We're willing ourselves to be fulfilled by someone else.
and then just being in that energy of lack, right? Of thinking I need to find my other half to make me complete is like the energy that you're coming from when you're in that mindset is an energy of lack. And what kind of relationships do you attract when you're in an energy of lack rather than fulfillment?
And it's an energy of desperation. Do it for me. Like, be me for me. I can't be whole on my own. Be me for me. And I don't think that we only, like, as human beings, I don't think we only pass that on to our partners. I think we actually, in many instances, pass it on to children as well. I think that, you know, if a lot of people were kind of honest with themselves, I think that they would find that they had children a lot of the time to actually fulfill a lack or a desire or a need within themselves. You know, like maybe more so than wishing to bring another life into the world that's independent to them.
Very much.
So to actually have something themselves rather than to give something to the child.
Yes. And two very different things. Very different things, right? And the energy behind those things is so different as well, right? So yeah, like when people are looking at having kids, it's really assessing what's my intention of wanting to have a child. Is it to give that child something, or is it to give myself something? Because that can really set the path for how you raise your child and the mindset in how you raise your child and how you show up every day as a parent for that child.
Right, and whether you allow that child to be the independent self that they are not just your child. In fact, you know, they don't belong to you at all. They belong to themselves right from the beginning, and you just get the opportunity to support them. But really, it's that case of, have you gone into it to have something, or have you gone into it to give something? Because that's going to frame your entire experience and your child's experience and the future relationship you have with them. Are they going to be escaping from a life that you're kind of dictating to them, or you are holding them within, or you've captured them within? Or are they going to be creating their own life with your support? Are you going to be a springboard, or are you going to be a cage?
Very much, very much. And with this, you can see how much not, you know, fulfilling ourselves and being complete individuals can literally impact every area of our life and the trajectory of where our life takes us, and even how we pass that on to future generations to come.
Exactly, yeah. And I think that the same thing then is true within the relationship, within a partnership. You know, in a romantic relationship, we essentially would love to be a springboard for each other rather than a cage. We essentially would like to be able to spring forwards more, because more whole in ourselves, because we have this connection to go back to or to connect with, and more than a whole together, more than just two halves. We are two wholes that come together then to be even more. So it's that springboard into a far greater life together than the, although very whole life, we could each have had apart.
Right.
And that's kind of really what we all want from love, right? And if that's what we want to gain, then that should be what we give, because what we put out into the world is what returns to us, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, that evolving together as two separate individuals instead of fitting together as a puzzle, that kind of just gets stuck where it is, which is a risk that happens when we search too much for our needs in someone else.
Well, I've definitely been that person before in the past who was desperately seeking someone to complete me. And in putting out desperation, I did not get a good thing back. It was, I got a very kind of a series of desperate issues back of a variety of different kinds. But it wasn't at all what I wanted.
That idea of expectations, right? I think that's one of the killer of relationships is having expectations. And when they're not met, then people lash out.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. And oftentimes those expectations are actually something that we would like to be able to give ourselves, and we can give ourselves. But
Mm-hmm.
instead of turning that vision inwards and seeing what
Mm-hmm.
we can do for ourselves, we turn it
Yes.
outwards
Yes.
and then expect it from others.
Mm-hmm.
But what we attract is, what we are being.
Right.
And so we then are attracting in other people who are expecting us to give them
Mm-hmm.
certain things back again. And it all becomes transactional.
Absolutely.
At that stage, we're dealing with conditional love.
Mm.
And I had no idea until I was, I'm going to say I was 41, or well, really before I truly understood what unconditional love even was or could
Right.
be. So before that, I was very transactional and I was giving out very conditional love.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people tend to do that as well. And until they're able to experience unconditional love or even learn what that feels like, it's like, how are you supposed to give it, right? So it's starting to give that unconditional love to yourself as well. So you can attract it and project it out. I mean, how many people are their biggest enemies and they're so hard on themselves? Right? They have expectations that they don't live up to and then they beat themselves up. So even, those types of behaviors and attitudes is like, if you can't give yourself that forgiveness and unconditional love, you won't be able to give it to someone else. So again, it's kind of like that self-compassion with yourself is what will start to breed unconditional love.
Absolutely. But it can be very difficult, like to actually be able to know what unconditional love is in order to give it to yourself. So
what it feels like.
what I found was that, I had to receive it from outside in order to be able to then in the future go on to recognize what it was and then be able to give it. So I think sometimes anybody who is out there giving unconditional love and is finding that they're not getting it back, there's got to be some self-care and some self-honoring, but maybe also some recognition that sometimes what you give actually comes back at a later date in a way that you didn't really know, and so you are helping someone and changing things for the better, but that doesn't mean that you should suffer under their conditional love while you try to give your unconditional love.
Absolutely. Yeah. And part of kind of unconditional love is an acceptance as well of who people are, right? That acceptance of this person is showing me who they are. And it's also a choice to decide how much of your energy to give to that person, right? That's also part of unconditional love for yourself is recognizing what are my own boundaries and how much of this can I give without burning myself out.
Right, and that's really true. That's a really important point, because obviously unconditional love, like all of these things, as we're saying, to be whole, you start with yourself.
Yes.
And so if you're out there giving unconditional love to other people, make sure you're also giving it to yourself, because otherwise an imbalance slips in and you can't, unless you're filling your own cup, you can't give it out, nor should you really, because if anybody's out there giving conditional love, and I know that's very difficult too, because I used to be the person who could only give conditional love, and it's not something we necessarily want to be, but it might be something that we're stuck as because we're not quite sure how to change. But at the same time, it can be really good to actually have some time alone in order to understand and work out how to give yourself and others unconditional love instead of conditional love, because at the end of the day, it's not just hurting others giving only conditional love, it's hurting yourself as well, because you're only giving yourself conditional love too.
Absolutely. Yes, we can only give to others what we give to ourselves, right? So again, that relationship with self is really key to cultivating any healthy relationships outside of ourselves.
Yeah, that story that we actually create of who we are, and who we are not just to others and with others, but who we are to and with ourselves, to find that a version of ourselves, that story that allows us to be whole.
Yes.
Thank you so much for joining us today, Kait.
Thank you so much for having me.
And we'd love to hear a little bit more about your newest book is
Yes.
Evolve, and just tell us a little bit about what that is.
Yeah, so as you know, I'm a mental health therapist, so I took the 5 most common issues that I found in my work with clients, and I put it into a book, and I provide actionable exercises to help people work through these 5 common issues. And
That's wonderful.
yes, and it's now available on Amazon and on Apple Books.
That's amazing. Can you give us a little insight into a couple of those 5 common issues? What are a couple of them that people can find in your book?
Low mood, anxiety, grief, and day-to-day stress, and of course, relationships.
Thank you so much, Kait. So if anyone's having any issues with those kinds of things, you can check out Kait's book. And of course, you can write to us here on Stories of Self as well. Yes. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much.
We are all telling our stories. And we are all telling ourselves stories about it all. Are you brave enough to walk with me into hearing, considering, and understanding the stories we tell? Join me next time, where we'll be considering more stories and illusions and stepping into creating the freedom we desire. Every moment, we are who we are choosing to be. You choose. Choose you. Because your story matters.